All right, guys. So my name is Jeremy Sharp, and I'm the Outreach Director for Students for Sensible Drug Policy. I currently work in the Southeastern region as well as Pacific. Today for our telethon, we're trying to feature one of our outstanding activists here in Georgia. Their name is Raiden Washington, and I'm going to go ahead and let Raiden tell a little bit about themselves. So Raiden, for our first question, will you tell us a little bit about yourself, your schooling, and your background?
Of course. Thanks so much for having me. Well, like Jeremy mentioned, my name is Raiden Washington. I'm a dog parent, nature lover, musician, filmmaker, and martial artist. And I received my bachelor's in film and video from Georgia State University a few years ago. I'm currently a first year law student at UGA, and I would like to be a social justice attorney. Just as I have fought to win martial arts championships, I would like to fight systems of oppression through law and policy. I have taught students the ways of discipline and self-protection through channeling inner peace, and my instructional skills and passion will be an advantage in teaching others how to fight for harmony in our world by first finding harmony within ourselves and our systems. I was able to apply my love of protecting others while assisting the New Georgia Project in a lawsuit targeting voter suppression, and I've also gotten to harmonize diverse audiences through empowering, educational, and entertaining media content and digital concerts through my nonprofit, Black Market Media. The resilience needed to master martial arts is the same fervor I will creatively apply to combating inequity in drug, race, gender, and sexuality policy.
Very eloquently said. Wow. Awesome. So why is drug policy important to you?
Well, watching the documentary 13th by Ava DuVernay really changed the way that I looked at the world. She helped me connect the dots on how seemingly helpful policy and legislation targeting drugs can actually translate into the systemic enslavement and exploitation of millions of people in the incarceration system, particularly people of color. But interestingly, drugs are at the intersection of a lot of different cultures and communities. So even the most privileged communities are negatively impacted by the way we currently operate with drugs in the US, such as how the white community in particular has been really heavily impacted by the opioid epidemic. As an Afro-Indigenous person, I'm especially aware that humanity's relationship with drugs stretch deeper into history than the current addiction and persecution epidemics that we currently see. And I see how pharmaceutical companies imitate the healing effects discovered by my ancestors and lace in addictive carcinogenic chemicals that cause the widespread harm that we see today. So I really think it's pivotal to educate the public about harm reduction techniques to address and prevent addiction, as well as combat mass incarceration by ceasing to target communities dependent on illicit drugs. Sanctioning drug use shouldn't be limited to those who can afford protection by migrating to the West Coast or maybe even some parts of the East Coast. I think state and city-based drug legalization, decriminalization, and commercialization are modern-day segregation that affects everyone, regardless of your background.
Another phenomenal response. So, being in Georgia, have you personally been affected by drug policies?
Yeah, so as a gender nonconforming queer person, I've personally found a lot of safe harbor for freedom of my expression in the rave community, especially here in Atlanta. It's really big. So it was actually in the skeevy electronic nightclubs of Atlanta that I first truly experienced the power of music to unite people of disparate backgrounds. And it's been really scary to see friends or even personally experience overdosing because you shouldn't have trusted what someone sold you or you didn't actually know what it was. And it just really reminded me and showed me the importance of proper education and tools to prevent consuming the wrong thing or too much of a substance. I recognize that we're currently in a prohibition era where it's taboo to talk about things that could keep you safe and could keep people that you love safe, which is totally ridiculous and counterproductive to the goal of safety. So I think it's really important that our societal perception of drug changes so people can be safe while using them and also deter dangerous substances from being laced into otherwise safe drugs that are sold on the street.
Another phenomenal response. Yeah, and I remember being in those clubs in Atlanta too. We pulled a test sample a few years back. I might have mentioned this to you, and 85% of the stuff that we tested at the quad, this was 2016 or so, turned up being methadone. So, just wanted to piggyback on what you're saying right there.
Yeah,
So the
a
next
lot of
question,
people don't know.
They don't know. You don't know you need to be conscious of what you're putting in your body and the risk associated with the stuff that's out there. So you guys are kind of a newer chapter. Shout out to Trip, Robin, and Daniel. They're not on this interview, but there's some other amazing activists at the University of Georgia who've been doing great work in supporting and helping fill some of the leadership roles within the chapter. But what are some of the goals that you guys have, for yourself and for the chapter in terms of drug policy reform?
Yes, thanks for shouting them out. Literally wouldn't be here talking about all this right now without their support, because it is entirely impossible to run a chapter by yourself. So I really appreciate the insight and thought that they've provided so far, as well as support. So as of right now, a few ideas that we have are collaborating with some other organizations that are at the law school, such as the American Constitutional Society, which is a liberal legal group. They're also nationwide, like SSDP. And we're also interested in teaming up with Fabrica Legis, which is a legislation-oriented organization at the law school. And basically, we're interested in doing some panels with them to kind of look at the effects of legalization, bring in some community leaders and local legislators that can speak on how anything from decriminalization to legalization will affect things on a legislative level, on a community level, and kind of get some perspectives from both sides of the line, I guess you'd say. We're also interested in doing some COVID conscious parties to fundraise for money. Even though we are just now restarting the UGA chapter of SSDP, the previous chapter was really well known for their fun parties pre-COVID. So we're trying to find a way to bring that back. We're also interested in doing some meetings that can equip students with harm reduction education and a more in-depth awareness of the positive benefits of safe drug use, such as I believe Vice has a documentary that talks about psilocybin and mushrooms. And I know Michael Pollan's How to Change Your Mind. I thought that'd be like a fun book club kind of read for everyone to experience, but also looking at some of the more indigenous practices that predate what we know about drugs today and how they were used safely in the past.
So again, impressed with another great response. So what have the vibes been like on campus since you guys have restarted this? Obviously, we've got COVID and stuff going on, but what's the perception? What's the community feeling? What are your classmates in law school saying to you about this?
Even though we have only recently restarted our chapter, and we're still in the planning phases of figuring out, where to head next, students and faculty have been really interested in our cause and have provided a lot of great insight and perspectives into ways we can work towards some of our long-term and short-term goals. So it's just been really encouraging to get support from people, even as, like, I don't know if they can tell, but I feel a little bit like a chicken running around with my head cut off, because it's just like, it's a little overwhelming not knowing exactly where we're headed, or like having a destination in mind and not knowing how to get there can feel a little bit overwhelming. But I think right now is the perfect time to mobilize young, excited masses and the students at UGA's campus, and also to work in tandem with the community that is right here supporting us every day just by housing our lovely institution. And if 2020 taught me anything, and just getting to see so many diverse groups of people marching together and safely protesting together when it came to the response to some of the police brutality incidents that we had going on last year, or at least the higher visibility of it compared to the past. Even getting to experience it myself, it was just really cool to see people like all kinds of different backgrounds there. And considering UGA and Athens has a very wide gamut of people that it attracts to it, I think it'll be a really cool opportunity to bring everyone together to fight for something that ultimately helps everyone.
For sure. And, UGA is perfect place for all this. There's just that whole activism feel there. So very excited to see, what you guys do with this vehicle. So you guys, we've had a couple of conversations about policy goals. What kind of policy goals is your chapter taking currently?
Well, long term, our goal is to pass a decriminalization bill here in Athens/Clark County. But even further down in the future, probably once I'm no longer a student here, we're hoping to set the works for a legalization bill that'll take place on the state level in Georgia. So those are our two kind of big milestones, and we're trying to figure out some baby steps to get there along the way.
Cool. It seems like you guys are really knocking those baby steps out of the way. So the
Thanks.
last final question I have for you. This is one I threw in the a little bit. I did a little bit of contemplating and threw this one at the end. But define leadership and give us an example of what good leadership looks like.
For sure. Well, I believe that being a leader requires a fearlessness and audacity to speak up against a wrong without society's stamp of approval or consent. And I think a really great example of that, at least the first one that came to mind, were the Black and queer transgender warriors, excuse me, who started the Stonewall riots back in the day, and therefore the first Pride. It's funny because now, as we in the LGBTQ plus community and our allies celebrate Pride every year, a lot of people are completely unaware that the first Pride was literally a riot against police attacking people just trying to hang out at a gay club in New York back in the day. But I feel like the term riot has a really negative connotation associated to it because of some of the like media politics that we play nowadays, and that's understandable. Riots are really destructive, but ultimately, in this case, a riot that pushing back against what's approved by the people that might ultimately be oppressing you, doing it without their approval is what got us to the freedoms that we have today in the queer and gender nonconforming community. So I just think that's a really good example of what being a leader takes is sometimes not asking permission to fix things and not waiting for society to catch up, but rather being that catalyst for change that really forces society to pay attention and make a statement in order to protect the people that it's claiming to be here for.
Well, my friend, I have a feeling you're going to be a huge catalyst for change within society. You're already making big waves on campus and, doing a lot of amazing things. Your past work really complements what you're doing right now. And I just want to let you know that I'm very proud of you and very excited to work alongside you and support you. So I wanted to thank you very much for spending the time with us. And I'm very excited to put this interview out there because these are some really great responses, and I'm so glad we recorded them. So great. I'm going to hit the end to record.